Bienvenue, good evening everybody to the Riel School Division's draft budget for 2022-23. As we begin all meetings, we will read our land acknowledgement. The Riel School Division brings together a community of schools on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe, Innuit, and Dakota. Our division is located on the homeland of the Métis. We recognize that Manitoba is also the homeland of the Anishinaabe and Dene. We respect the treaties made on this land and acknowledge the harms and mistakes of past and present. We dedicate ourselves to authentic alliances with the Indigenous community in a spirit of reconciliation and cooperation. As many of you are probably like me, you'd like to know the agenda and what's the plan for this evening. So we are going to get through about 6 different items here. So obviously we will begin this evening with introductions. We will talk about the multi-year strategic plan, budget 2021-22 and its impact as we flow into 22-23. We will talk about the thought exchange and have an opportunity for questions and certainly some closing thoughts. Firstly, of course, some introductions. In this room, physically together, we have our Superintendent of Schools, Christian Michalik. We have our Secretary Treasurer, J.B. Rudnicki. Our Vice Chair, Sandy Nemeth. And myself, Louise Johnston. And of course, behind the scenes, helping navigate, we have our Communications Manager, Taylor Fenn. And our Director of Information Technology Systems, Clark Hagan. As well, I would like to introduce the boards who are in attendance virtually. We have Pamela Kolchak, Josie Landry, Robert Page, Tom Parker, Chris Sigurdsson, Cindy Turner, and Neil Vadabonker. Throughout the evening, you have an opportunity to continue joining us on our Thought Exchange survey. This is the QR code and the number to join our Thought Exchange. It is live and will continue right until we close the budget process. The question that we have posed on Thought Exchange and invite you to really deliberate and provide any kind of feedback is, as we plan for this 2022-23 budget, what should we focus on to ensure success of every student in Riel School Division? Your ideas and opinions are truly valued. So the screen that you're looking at now is what you'll be able to see and how you'll be able to ask questions. You'll see on the side that there's a purple or blue bar, depending on how it's showing up on yours, that simply says ask question. So all you'll need to do is type there and you'll be able to type your question. You won't see it pop up immediately. It's going to be collected. Our goal, of course, at the end of the evening will be to try to answer as many questions as possible. As well, we will provide continuing answers and updates on this budget through our Riel School Division website, through our Spotlight Stories. Our motto for our school division is thriving learners, flourishing communities. Our vision is for all members of our community to excel as caring, confident, capable, and resilient lifelong learners who contribute to a democratic and sustainable world. Our mission is to provide safe, inclusive and engaging environments where personal and collective learning are valued and each one of us reaches our full potential. Our multi-year strategic plan was developed with community in 2019. It ensures that we remain focused on Lrsd's top priorities. This document has become our true north and defines what we value together as our school division. Together we own this work, and the multi-year strategic plan holds us accountable. You will see evidence this evening on how this 2022-23 budget clearly supports priorities in our multi-year strat plan. So again, to remind us of our 4 key corners, we have belonging, which is creating a culture of equity and inclusion; mastery, creating a culture of learning and well-becoming; independence, creating a culture of inquiry and responsibility; and generosity, a culture of caring and collaboration. I will now ask Sandy, the Vice Chair of the Board, to walk us through the building this draft budget.
Thank you very much, Louise. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. So just to provide a little bit of context around conversations that the board and senior leadership have been having as we prepared the draft budget that we are presenting tonight. One of the things that Louise has already touched on is our multi-year strategic plan and the fact that we are in the 4th and final year of this conversation. This is also the final year of the current board's mandate. October 26th of this year will see the Louis Riel School Division welcome a new board with a new 4-year mandate, and that, of course, begins a process of many opportunities for a new group of folks to chart a path that we continue to be on. We're also considering the impact of the pandemic and what the last few years have looked like. The impact across the system has been quite significant. There has been pressures on our staff, pressures on our finances, and of course pressures on the way we are compelled to do, or were compelled to do, business, and some of the hurdles that we had to navigate as we went along the way. There's also been legislation from government that has also required we have some conversations and make some adjustments, and of course Bill 28, the Public Services Sustainability Act, has financial implications, and you'll hear more of that coming up. Bill 64, the Education Modernization Act, was an opportunity for us as a community to come together and across the province and have conversations about the future of education in this province. And of course, Bill 45, the Public Schools Amendment, and the Manitoba Teachers Society Amendment Act was passed into legislation recently, and will see significant amount of work across the entire sector as we prepare for new contracts and new bargaining. The good news is that we continue to be inspired by our multi-year strategic plan. We continue to be inspired by the innovation and creativity of our senior leadership, of the staff in our schools, of our families, and of our students. And that, at the end of the day, is certainly providing us an opportunity to think about where we want to go, what we want to protect, and what it is that we want to build upon as we look down the road. In terms of funding for 2022-23, the province has provided us with just over $97 million. One-time funding was provided to all school divisions to help deal with some of the financial pressures over the last couple of years. And you'll hear more about each of these coming up. So that was another just over $6 million. Local funding, which is what you see reflected on your education property tax portion of your property tax bill that you will get in the mail, is just over $102 million. And other income provides just over $3 million. So when you think about other income, that would be, for example, our international student program, summer school courses that students register for, and continuing education. So on the whole, total funding for 2022-2023 is pretty close to $210 million. For those of you that are more visual, the pie chart is just another way to express all those dollar amounts that I just shared, and shows you how the pie is sliced amongst each of those categories. In terms of local funding for 2022-2023, as we have seen for the last couple of years, government has directed school divisions not to increase education property taxes. So again, there will be no increase. The amount that normally we would collect is offset by way of a property tax offset grant. That is close to $4.5 million for Riel School Division. It's different for every division in the province. And at the end of the day, when you get your property tax statement and you look at the portion that is attached to the school division that you live in, you'll see a slight decrease. And this year we are forecasting just under 1% decrease, or not quite $18 on an average home in the Riel School Division. And for that calculation, the average home in our community is valued at not quite $350,000. Many people want to understand or be able to calculate what their education property taxes are going to look like. This formula that's here is reflected in greater detail on the City of Winnipeg's website, but in essence, what it requires you to do is dig out the property tax statement, or the value of the home or property that you have, that you would have received in the mail at some point already this year. Take that value and multiply it by 0.45, and then multiply that number by what has been established as the mill rate in Riel School Division, which this year is 12.825 divided by 1,000. And that mill rate is the amount of tax that you pay per dollar of the assessed value of the property or home that you own. It is the same you can calculate in Riel using this formula and that mill rate for any property, but the mill rate is different from school division to school division, and of course it's impacted by the value of residences throughout. And this just reflects that. This is the most recent data that we have for 2021. So last year the mill rate was 13.1, and we are consistently and historically, as a 20-year-old school division almost, somewhere in the middle of all the metro school divisions in the City of Winnipeg. Another number that folks are interested in, and that we always provide as this part of this presentation, is the amount that is spent per student in Riel. These dollars are found in the frame report that is put out by government every year. So this most recent values that we have are for 2020-21, and you will see that again we're in the center, $12,691 spent per student per year for the 2021 school year. So hopefully at this point you have a sense of where we're going to be going this evening. Louise has provided you some background into what we value and what our multi-year strategic plan, the journey that is taking us on up until next year. And you have a sense of where the dollars come from that allow us to do the work that we do and look after everything that needs to be looked after. So I wish you good evening, and at this point I will pass it on to our Secretary Treasurer, Jamie Rudnicki.
Thank you, Sandy. So Riel School Division has experienced cost pressures in the current year that will have an impact on building the budget for the 2022-2023 school year. First cost pressure is pandemic costs. This is the third school year in which the pandemic has had financial implications for the division. This year, our pandemic costs are projected to be at least $3.8 million, with $900,000 being allocated towards mental health and well-being, $2.4 million spent on safe operations. This would include items such as PPE, hand sanitizer, medical grade masks, cleaning supplies, and ventilation. $832,000 has been spent or will be spent on additional teachers and support staff to support learning impacts across grade levels. $110,000 has been spent on vaccine promotion, and $410,780 will be spent on additional teachers, support staff, materials to support learning recovery. The pandemic costs incurred by the division will be partially offset by 2 grants from the provincial government totaling $3.4 million. This will result in a shortfall of funding by the provincial government of approximately $400,000 that will need to be incurred by the division to fight the pandemic. Next, I'll provide an overview of the projected, next pressure is settlement pressures or settlement wage costs. So interest arbitration has had an adverse impact on our salary costs. In the current school year, Lrsd settled with LRTA, QP 4642, QP 3473, and non-union staff based on the precedent set in the 2021 Pembina Trail School Division Interest Arbitration Award for teachers. In keeping with our 20 years of negotiation history, the award for QP followed the settlement teacher, which included a 1.6% wage increase in 2019-2020, 1.4% increase for 2020-2021, 0.5% increase for 2021-2022, and for this upcoming budget, an increase based on COLA of 3.3% for the 2022-2023 school year. On February 11th, 2022, the division received $6,347,179 from the province to offset these cost pressures for the 2021-2022 school year. The actual cost is an estimated $8.7 million, a shortfall of roughly $2.4 million. The division will receive an additional $6,271,900 in the 2022-2023 school year as another one-time incremental cost pressure payment. And this will also help offset additional wage settlement cost pressures that will be incurred for the next school year. So now I will talk about projected expenditures when building the 2022-2023 budget. The proposed draft budget for 2022-2023 school year includes 85% of our budget allocated towards salaries and benefits, and 15% allocated towards supplies, equipment, and contractual services. During the current school year, the division budgeted 83% for salaries and benefits. The proposed increase of 2% reflects additional investments in teaching and supports for full-day kindergarten, investments in diversity, equity, and inclusion, additional teachers to address projected enrollment increases with the emphasis to maintain current classroom sizes, as well as accounting for ongoing wage pressures arising from wage settlements. This graph outlines the budgeted breakdown of staff in Lrsd for the upcoming school year. Proposed permanent and term staffing will total 21,000 total FTEs. This represents the total complement for the year, for next year. So broken out, teachers represent 51.2% or 1,076 FTE. Educational assistants represent 27.2% or 572 FTE. Support staff represent 15.5% of total staff for 326 FTE. Principals and vice principals are 3.2% or 67 FTE for the current year. Of note, principals and vice principals are teachers, but we thought that breaking it out amongst school administration would help the community understand this breakdown. Board office administration will be 2.4% or 50 FTE. And finally, we have trustees, which make up 0.4% of staff in the division. Next, we show how each dollar is spent to support Education Riel School Division. So for every dollar, regular instruction, we spend 57.1 cents. Student support staff, we spend 19.5 cents per dollar. Operations maintenance, we spend 10.5 cents per dollar. Instructional and other support services, 4.6% for every dollar. Transportation, 2.7 cents. Divisional administration, 2.6 cents. Financial costs, 2.2 cents. And finally, community education at 0.8 cents per dollar. Now I'll provide details of some exciting capital projects that are happening in our division. Here we have a partial listing of capital projects that are being supported by the provincial government. And these only encompass some of the larger capital projects. So as you see from the list, we have College Jean Sauvé. We're having a major addition and renovation, which I'll expand on in a minute. Marion School, we're looking at doing a building envelope and renovation project. Glenwood School, looking at doing an elevator, roof replacement, and universal change room. Riel Arts and Technology Center, roof replacement. Shamrock School Division, roof and exterior wall replacement. James Friends Collegiate and St. George roof replacements as well. So for College Jean Sauvé, we are excited to announce a major addition and renovation project. This includes a 2-story, 16-room expansion with an elevator, renovation of 5 science labs, a new music room, new fitness facility, expanded storage room for the gymnasium, and additional parking lot located on the north side of the building. The preliminary cost of the budget is $13,638,506, with construction starting in June 2022 with an anticipated completion date of August 2023. There will be 3 phases to the project. The first phase, which is outlined in yellow, will center around reinforcing the existing roof, which will tie into the new addition when phase 3 occurs. Phase 2, which is outlined in green, will include renovations of the existing 5 science classrooms and construction of a new fitness facility. And finally, for phase 3, we will see the construction of a new 16-room addition with elevator, new music room, parking lot, and universal care room. The next project that I'll talk about is Marion School. The division has had a lot of deliberations with the provincial government about Marion School, with the initial proposal including the construction of a new building envelope, windows, self-care room, universal toilet, with an anticipated cost of $5,280,999. In addition to this request, we're also requesting from the government additional support for a building addition, bus loop, as well as interior design renovation to complete the overall vision of the project. And the last project I want to talk about is Sage Creek. So when we are trying to address enrollment pressures in Sage Creek, we see on this slide that the existing Lrsd student population is 1,020. However, a huge chunk of them are attending Shamrock School and Windsor Park Collegiate. And we are going to run out of route options soon. We will continue having conversations with the community about these options. Meetings and communications with the Sage Creek, Shamrock, and Windsor Park Collegiate communities are anticipated to take place before spring break. So the new Sage Creek School. So right now where we are at with the development of this is that the division has received an authorization letter from Manitoba Education in January 2022 to purchase a 7.22 acre piece of land at the intersection of Ward and Robert Oxtall Drive. And so you can see the outline here on the picture. So it's just south of Ward Avenue. And the total cost of the purchase was $6,187,540. So at this point, we've just purchased the land, and now we're continuing the process of looking at design authorization and construction. The last piece of capital projects I would like to talk about are the locally supported capital projects, which are the internally funded projects by the division. So we've currently identified 12 schools that will require ventilation upgrades with an estimated cost of $1.2 million. Now we've preliminarily earmarked this as internally funded. However, we are reaching out to the province of Manitoba to see what kind of supports we can have in regards to this project. In addition to that, we are looking at additional locally supported capital projects at École Marianne Gabory, where they need a chiller replacement, Glenlawn Collegiate, as well as Shamrock School. We're looking at doing practical arts room renovations, École Provencher, Minnetonka, and as well as Darwin School, some classroom renovations as well. So now I'd like to pass it over to Christiane.
Thank you, Jamie. and Louise and Sandy. So I'm going to build on what Louise, Sandy, and Jamie have shared. They've shared our multi-year strategic plan journey. They've shared numbers related to revenue and expenditures. And I'm just going to build on all of that and focus on it, or focus everyone's attention on what's at the heart of expenditures next year. And so when we look at that $209,308,165 of revenue for next year that Sandy explained, and we map that onto what Jamie shared about expenditures, and that slide that touched on how 86% of dollars spent in Lrsd are about the people that make up Lrsd. And so although he just ended on the importance of the spaces we live in, the spaces we learn in, being important and requiring investment and nurturing, we're really happy to see the province supporting some very important work. The board and the senior leadership team has really made the focus of expenditures respond to what we're hearing from the community. What we're hearing from the community parallels what together we've created in the form of a multi-year strategic plan, where a great deal of that $209+ million is going to go towards efforts to not only maintain class size, but do what we can to actually reduce that class size. And I'm going to get into that in just a second. And to invest in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, that being said, we also need to keep some ideas in mind. We do have a responsibility to ensure we meet contractual obligations. We have insurance companies and service providers projecting that they will be asking more for their services. And as Jamie touched on, we've also negotiated settlements with all of our employee groups, and we want to respect those commitments. And finally, as you'll see in the next series of slides, we also have an increase in enrollment. We have some pressures in terms of enrollment that are a reflection of the reality that although we're still in a pandemic, in February 2022.
I didn't get that.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Siri's responding to my sharing some thoughts. Hopefully you're getting it. So we're seeing increases in enrollment, and quite significant increases, likely a reflection of a post-pandemic future coming to us all soon. So let's have a look at enrollment and class size. So on this slide, we're projecting for you enrollment and expenditures related to that enrollment in kindergarten to grade 3. So in Manitoba, for some time, well, essentially starting in 2012, we've been having a conversation about reducing class size in the early years. And what you see across the slide, across all of these years, are these efforts, not only in Lrsd, but across Manitoba to try to decrease and maintain a reasonable class size in those first years of learning. And so what we see in this slide is a pandemic year in 2021, where enrollment had been on a steady, in a steady pattern of increasing in Lrsd, and suddenly took a dip that no one had projected before the pandemic. And so that enrollment dip, combined with all the dollars we expended navigating the pandemic last year, dollars that also included creating a learning from home school where we had over 1,000 students not learning in school, outside of school, where we asked a great deal of staff, allowed us to see this, the class sizes in grades K to 3 come down considerably to an average of 17. Now, this year is what we've seen is actually the mirror of that, a mirror of that, in that we've seen enrollment increase significantly. We've seen enrollment increase back to 15,424 students, and it's actually higher. That was the September number. We're actually sitting at over 15,600 students at this time. And so the reason the bar is yellow is that these numbers have not been finalized. The enrollment isn't finalized. Well, it is as a capture of September enrollment, but it continues to grow. It's over 15,600 at the moment. And again, our efforts to respond to that enrollment increasing, respond to the pandemic, has resulted in increased staffing over the course of the last few months that may not actually be reflected in this class size average right now that we're seeing at 20.5. And Jamie alluded to some of those pandemic investments in an earlier slide. So what are we projecting for next year? Well, we're being far more careful. Well, we're trying to be, not that we weren't last year. We're anticipating adding at least 200 more students to in schools as a result of moving into a post-pandemic world. So we're projecting 15,802 students. Again, the actual reality is we have over 15,600 students at present. And so again, this is an enrollment we're projecting for September that will likely grow throughout the year. And so it wouldn't be a surprise to me to learn at some point next year that we have over 16,000 students in Lrsd schools. So taking that into account, what is built into this budget is a significant, an important number of additional teachers, classroom teachers, in grades K to 3, resulting in what we are projecting will be an 18.91 class size average in kindergarten to grade 3. To respond to the needs the community will have in a post-pandemic world coming out of a pandemic and the impacts it has had. And it's also a response to the feedback we're hearing from the community that Louise will touch on in just a little bit. So all of this focus in kindergarten to grade 3 because of just how important those initial years are, but they can't come at the expense of grades 4 to 12. And so in grades 4 to 8, you can see here how throughout this journey going back to 2012, when government said, talked about capping enrollment at 20, despite that focus, that was everyone's focus in Manitoba, it never came at the expense of class size in the other grades. And so here we're going to make every effort to actually reduce class size in grades 4 to 8 in contrast to what it is this year at present, and while also keeping up with enrollment, a growing enrollment, which you'll see here on this slide. And finally, These average class sizes in grades 4 to 8, K to 8 don't come at the expense of grades 9 to 12. In grades 9 to 12, the teacher to pupil ratio has been and will continue to be 19.8 students per teacher in French immersion and 22.8 students per teacher in English programs. Finally, another very important group of colleagues that are a part of the team that make up all those who journey alongside students in our schools are our educational assistants. So just like Jamie had shared that the teachers next year, in our budget next year, represent 51.2% of all staff in Lrsd, over half of all staff in Lrsd. The educational assistants represent 27.2% of all staff. So they're the next largest group of staff. And here again, listening to the public we serve, we are hearing the need to continue to invest in this group of valued colleagues. And so you can see as a result that we are budgeting for in this draft budget an additional number of EAs to serve strictly in the classroom. So this number here that was 390 back in 2012 and is now projected to be 484 full-time equivalent are the educational assistants that are working alongside teachers in classrooms, from kindergarten to grade 12. The actual total number of educational assistants that will be working across different areas in schools is actually 572 educational assistants. Now, we're also slightly increasing the support staff in schools, custodians, clerical staff, so there's a slight increase there as well, keeping up with enrollment, representing 326 full-time equivalent colleagues, 15.5% of staff in Lrsd. And finally, we're also, in this budget, going to be increasing the amount of staff allocated to the vice principalship across several schools. And so with this enrollment growth, with the needs we see in schools, we are going to increase the allocation of vice principals, which again represent 3.2% of the overall staff in Lrsd. So these are the areas where we're going to see increases in staffing. And so now I want to talk about these investments to strengthen diversity, equity, and inclusion in a little more detail. So of course, ensuring that you have a sufficient number of teachers in classrooms is one of the most important ways you invest to strengthen diversity, equity, and inclusion. But there are other more concrete ways that we've been investing and that we will bolster in the 22-23 budget. I'm going to talk about full-day kindergarten. I'm going to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism services, and bring meaning to that logo that you see on the slide here. I'm going to talk about two specific efforts as part of this DEI and anti-racism initiative, a community kitchen and the Ojibwe language program that we have been learning from since 2016 and want to see flourish. So let's talk about full-day kindergarten. So in Lrsd, for some time now, we've been learning from 4 schools. So a few years back, I don't have it written down, I think it was 2017, we we established the need for full-day kindergarten. Having talked about it for years, we've been talking about it for years. We decided we would initiate a pilot project in 4 schools that evolved into something more than a pilot project. And we've learned a great deal over these years. We've studied it all closely to see its impact. And well, in a minute, I'm going to share with you what we're seeing in terms of impact, in terms of our local research. And of course, the research we see internationally and nationally that makes the case for, well, robust programming in the area of early years, and so it can take the shape of full-day kindergarten starting much earlier than it does in Manitoba. And so we've just come to a point that the board, its senior leadership, when we see all of the evidence, we just can't not do something in response. We have to do something. And this is the best we can do right now with the funds, with the revenue we've been allocated. We're going to add 5 additional schools for a total of 9 schools. We're going to add Archwood School, École Varenne, Hastings School, Marion School, sorry, my French got there, and Victor Major School. So the mix of the 4 existing schools. So we've had, again, as I've said, full-day K at École Provencher, La Vallée School, St. George School, and Victor Wyatt School for some time. Now, because we can't afford to offer universal full-day kindergarten in Lrsd, we wish we could. La DSFM, a sister school division in St. Vital and St. Boniface, since its existence, I believe. I believe it started right from its existence in '95, but I know for sure that it's been around since 2000 because my oldest daughter was in kindergarten at that time, and it was full days. And so the DSFM is one of those school divisions in Manitoba that has had full-day K for a very long time. And I know that a few other rural divisions have been able to afford it. But that would be it. That would be it in Manitoba. So how to explain that reality? Why this disparity? Why does one school division have universal full-day kindergarten while others, many have none, or others have a smattering, and maybe, as I've suggested, a few rural divisions can afford to have full-day kindergarten. And when we contrast that to Canada, let's just stick with Canada. I'm not even going to go beyond Canada. I think it's important that the community listening in, the 117 attendees right now, understand that this isn't the way it looks across Canada. In British Columbia, Ontario, Quebec, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland and Labrador, and the Northwest Territories, parents, families, children enjoy full-day kindergarten. And in many of these jurisdictions, full-day kindergarten starts 1 year sooner. So they actually enjoy, in many of these jurisdictions, full-day kindergarten for 2 years. And I believe there's an abundance of research, nationally and internationally, to demonstrate that this is one of the most important investments. It's not the only investment. It's not a panacea. It's not a silver bullet, but it's one of the most important investments that results in better outcomes for all students and better societal outcomes for all those who live in these provinces that have seen the light. And I know that this board is committed alongside its senior leadership team to make the case that we in Manitoba need to step up and, like other provinces, make full-day kindergarten available to families and have that be a part of our vision to see early childhood supports enhanced. When we look at that funding announcement earlier today about the federal government investing over $1 billion in Manitoba over the course of the next few years, we believe in Lrsd that kindergarten, full day kindergarten, for not just 1 year, but 2, is a part of that solution, because it is the solution in so many other provinces in Canada and in so many countries outside of Canada. Right now, you wonder, how do we arrive at the, because this is a challenging decision to come to. This has been a lot of deliberation over the course of many, many, many days in January and February, arriving at a number, and right now it's about equity, and it's about economic equity, or rather economic inequity. It is about communities in our school division that, sadly, where we see economically, we see that there is inequity that needs to be addressed, and economic inequity, disparity that impacts on children. And so this is a lot of what goes into choosing some schools and not others. But this shouldn't be the way we approach full day kindergarten, because it just shouldn't be the way we approach public schools and what they offer society. Public schools and what they offer should be, there are some things about public schools that should be universal, and how one starts their journey in public education should be universal. But it isn't. Not yet, but soon, I believe it will. And so, what do our results show? Why this investment? Well, when we look at the report card data, and we've been looking at it for some years now, we do see improvements at the end of grade 1. We see more students when we compare students in full day K versus half day K attaining levels 3 and 4 on the report card. We see that not only at the end of grade 1, but we see it at the end of grade 3. We see lasting results, lasting impact. And so our research parallels the research we see nationally and internationally, and we believe makes the case for universal full day K in Manitoba. Okay, enough about that. Let's talk about another important conversation we've been having together, the board and senior leadership team. Of course, full day kindergarten right now is all about strengthening diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it really is about equity. Now, another important initiative this year, and an initiative that needs to be supported by a budget, has been this creation of a diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism services team. And so we are proposing $1 million new to operationalize this vision. So for a while now, programs like Aspire, KTEP, the René Delorme Center, Peaceful Village have been a part of our journey. But what folks may not know is that how we paid for these initiatives. So Aspire is the summer programming that we provide children in Lrsd. KTEP is a program, it's a partnership with the University of Winnipeg, where we support educational assistants that self-declare as Indigenous and would like to become teachers, and where we support them on that journey of learning to become teachers. The René Delorme Center is this part of the Lavallee, Victor Major, Victor Wyatt, École Varenne, École Julie Riel hub of community. The Peaceful Village is an initiative started by a teacher some time ago in the Winnipeg School Division, where we work with newcomer and equity-seeking groups to provide some programs to students who are newcomers. These programs were funded through surplus. We would pay for them if at the end of the year we had some surplus dollars. And we've come to the resolution that with this DEI initiative that no, we need to operationalize these investments in Lrsd. They can't count on surplus. They must become a part of our DNA, operationalized. So this is exciting news. Now I'm going to talk about a new initiative next, to add just a little more detail to these investments, and an existing initiative. Let's talk about the community kitchen. So the community kitchen is a new vision for how we address food insecurity in our community. And yes, in Lrsd there is food insecurity because of that economic disparity, inequity that I spoke about earlier. And so we are reimagining an initiative we've had, a long-standing initiative dating back to before amalgamation, dating back more than 20 years. We're celebrating 20 years as a school division. Long before Lrsd became a thing, St. Boniface School Division was a thing, and had created a community kitchen, Crackers, in Windsor Park, where students that learned best with some hands-on experiences were learning the culinary arts in the context of a bistro. So we're building on that vision. So what we're imagining is, what we're going to reimagine is Bistro in the Park right now is a space that we rent from some folks that own a strip mall in Windsor Park. And we're going to move that from that space to a community kitchen in the RDC, in the René Delorme Center. And so how we're envisioning this growing from what it is Chef Michael, who's the teacher, but also a Red Seal chef, and his staff, and the high school students he works with from across Lrsd are going to continue to cook together. And now they're going to cook together in relationship with families, with mums and dads and cousins and friends. And they're going to cook together, they're going to make food together for the whole of the school division, for students in classrooms across Lrsd to address the inequities and that food insecurity that continues to worry us so much, because this is one of the basic needs, one of the many basic needs that need to be met in order for learning to occur in classrooms. If one is hungry, it is very challenging to learn or to work. And so I'm so excited about this investment and to share more in the months and years to come. And finally, I want to touch on another small investment that dates back to 2016, sort of like that investment in full-day kindergarten. So, Indigenous languages matter to many of us. These languages really need to matter. There are about 70 Indigenous languages in Canada, from, if my memory serves me well, from the readings I've done and the conversations I've had. And one of those languages is Anishinaabe, Ojibwe is another way of saying it. So back in 2016, a few of us in the city were talking about what could we do about Indigenous languages, and what more can we do? If we don't do something, these languages are at risk of disappearing, and the school system has had a great deal to do with that, as we know. residential school system, had everything to do with that. And so we are indebted. We need to do something about it. We need to be about finding solutions. And so a couple of school divisions decided to implement a bilingual program in one of their schools, the Winnipeg School Division and Seven Oaks School Division. And we explored that with our community as well. But what we learned in dialogue with our community was that it just didn't feel right that, and this is not meant to be a judgment of what the different approaches in different school divisions. This really is just meant to say that when we asked our community about their interest in a bilingual program in one school, the feedback we'd received was that it just felt like they were just too torn, leaving their school for another school. And we know something about that. Those of us who've been around long enough to see how the French immersion journey evolved from those from one school in 1973 in the Winnipeg School Division to many schools it is today. But it just felt as though we just weren't ready for that one school, that one bilingual school just yet. And so in dialogue with the community where we arrived, and again, you just can't arrive at these ideas without being in community, was this idea that well, maybe what we need to do is something not unlike what actually transpired before French immersion occurred, or what transpired in parallel. And that was basic French or core French before it became basic French, and now we call it French language and culture in English schools. Was something more that exposed more people to a language. So we've talked, and we've been talking about it and conceiving of it since 2016. We are on this journey right now of building a curriculum in Lrsd, a curriculum modeled on the language and culture, French language and culture curriculum in English schools, in kindergarten to grade 3. And its intended purpose is to expose students to language. And so we've been building a curriculum while teaching a curriculum since 2016. And we made a very small investment in 2016, a little more invested in 2017, but we haven't invested any dollars since. And now this year we're saying it's time. 2022 to 2032 has been declared by the United Nations the Decade of Indigenous Languages. So inspired by the conversation internationally and in Canada, inspired by our own work here, the board has committed to hiring more staff to build this Indigenous language program, this Ojibwe language program, which will be hopefully sooner rather than later a program that delivers this Indigenous language, Anishinaabe, a language spoken on this land that then became Treaty 1, that was part of this Treaty 1 negotiation, the language that was being spoken at the time of the treaty on this land. So it's going to take us a while. This investment won't get us there, but it's going to get us, some distance to having all students in Lrsd, no matter how they identify, learning Ojibwe, being exposed to Ojibwe in kindergarten, grades 1, 2, and 3. So a significant investment coming to schools in 2023. The team will grow by 3 more cohorts. And so that is that. These are the exciting initiatives I thought I'd touch on. And now I pass it on to Louise, who's going to share how the community has inspired all of these investments. And then I think we're going to take questions.
Absolutely. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Sandy. Truly some important and exciting opportunities ahead of us. And, you know, it's very clear that we're trying to maximize every single cent of revenue that we have to serve our communities very well. As all of you on the line already know, that consultation has always been a part of how Riel School Division moves forward. Your support and your honesty and feedback has always been part of what we've done. When we look at this slide, this is really exciting for us because, of course, with COVID and with everything else, we've had to find new ways to continue a real authentic consultation. So this year, compared to last year, we saw 456% increase in participation on thought exchange. To date on this budget, we have 1,213 participants that have shared 1,227 thoughts and rated 36,000 conversations. And this is truly an important piece for us. I'd like to share a couple conversations that we've witnessed on thought exchange. What we have seen specifically on all the surveys is we see three key thoughts that continue to be starred or rated the highest, specifically things that you have heard in this evening's presentation, because we've tried to ensure that we've incorporated all of these thoughts. So smaller class sizes with adequate support, with adequate staff supporting all students, so many different learners with unique abilities and challenges, all deserve quality education, but that quality means more support. And as you can see, that has a 4.6 star rating, and this is out of a 5-star. More teachers, reduce class size to get every student, give them the opportunity they need. And of course, adequate staffing to ensure lower class sizes and sufficient support for students with academic and special needs. Larger class size, lots of time used for crowd management and increased risks of close contacts. Smaller class sizes allow for more individual support. So what you have, I hope, as you've listened to the presentation this evening, I hope that you have seen these three key thoughts that have been provided by you, the community, embedded in every single thing that you have heard here this evening. The other one is I want to share a couple slides here that actually show differences in the type of opinions that we receive from community through this process. And it really shows you how we come up with, you know, the budget that you've heard here this evening. So this particular slide, as we said, we serve a very diverse community, people at many different stages of lives, and we see the differences and we have a real opportunity to learn from one another. This one particularly, side A, of course, continues to support and speak to the smaller class size with more direct contact between teacher and student, less behavioral distractions, keep size low, class size low, and support students with exceptionalities. Wow, that's a word I have trouble with apparently. Everyone deserves to learn in a safe environment. And then if you flip over to side B, you'll see that our communities speak to $165 million, which is a significant amount of, you know, income in salaries, needs to be accountable, needs more accountability, needs to be better ways to ensure we are getting value from this. Start by connecting wage to student outcomes. Well, I mean, what we've learned here is that our public is saying smaller class sizes, but there's a significant voice that says we need more accountability and we need to find ways together to get there. And then you see that kind of common side, the side A, B, we look to see, so what can side A and B agree on if they were making this decision? And again, we see the same consistency, more teachers, reduced class size, smaller class size, more staff and support staff. So I think through these kind of conversations, we are able to arrive at a budget that we think our community will support. The next slide really talks about some of the things that Lrsd is a leader, is unique in, specifically this piece talked about library, time in classrooms. You'll see the 382 people participated in Side A and 124 in Side B. This one is around teacher librarians. So for those of you who don't know this, Lrsd is one of the few divisions in Manitoba that hires and employs teacher librarians specifically. So we look at Side A, teacher librarians are essential in ensuring information literacy are being taught and supported. Our students are being bombarded with constant media and information. Information literacy are essential in understanding and filtering. Library collection, school libraries boost student achievement, and a good collection can entice even reluctant readers. Well, you'll be glad to know in this budget, not only do we continue to support the teacher librarian model, but you will see some small increments and some small efficiencies added to this as well. You know, and you can continue reading through these. We look at Slide B's. We've certainly had some people that were very challenged with the remote learning. And, you know, those are hopefully days that are behind us as we come out of COVID. But again, you know, we've all learned so much by doing this together. So these are some examples, and of course, for any of you that are interested in looking further, you can jump on the Thought Exchange. It continues to be live. Please share your thoughts. I hope that you know that it is valued and that we truly do pay attention to it. And I think from here now we get to jump on some questions. So I'm just going to quickly change the screen. So with that, I do want to say thank you for making this draft budget a priority in your households this evening and being part of it. We thank you for any feedback that you're providing. And I'd like to look at some of the questions. Now, there's 4 of us here in the room, so certainly we're going to try to answer as many as possible and, you know, look to see if we can clarify that particular piece. So, this is quite a long one. Shall I read it then? I can read that, yep. So, the first question that I see in front of us is, with the freeze on property taxes and inflation at the highest in years, this has to affect teachers in some capacity. How will there still be monies available for supports in the classrooms? I'm a long-time teacher, and the support for students who need it are very sparse. This puts extreme stresses on the teachers and makes some classrooms not equitable, as it should be for all students, because we are stretched with students who are needing more supports. How will this be addressed? I'm going to invite Christian to speak to this, please. And on the financial side, Jamie, if there's anything you might want to add as well. So Christian, can I hand that to you?
Sure, Louise. So indeed, despite the freeze on property taxes, we are seeing from the provincial government additional dollars to make up for that freeze. And we're also seeing additional dollars to address those pressures related to inflation and what contributes to inflationary pressures. And so what we've done is we've looked at that revenue, and we've decided to leverage that additional revenue to focus on the classroom and increase the number of teachers and educational assistants in classrooms, and shift resources to the classroom. And as a result, we shared earlier this evening what the expenditures we're budgeting for will mean in terms of projected class size. And well, in the early years, it will be the smallest class size average in our history as a school division. And in the middle and high school years, it will be a class size smaller than this year.
Thank you, Christian. that. Jamie, was there anything that you'd care to add on the financial side?
Also for the financial side, the direct support that are given to the schools has remained unchanged for this current school year, or for the next school year. And even though there are cost pressures in regards to inflationary factors, a lot of our contracts that we have with suppliers, they are multi-year agreements with prices being fixed in different years. And so we are always working with our vendors and our suppliers in order to get as much bang for our buck for our schools as much as possible.
Thank you very much, Jamie. The next question is one that I wish we had a very concrete answer. What is the timeline for the second Sage Creek school? You have an existing school designed for École Sage Creek developed. Why the delay? I will hand that over to Christian.
Yes, well, like Jamie shared, and our motto has been 2 by 2022, but this, of course, is become unrealistic to expect a new school to open its doors in 2022. But in essence, we're saying now is the time. Now is the time to move forward. So the conversations we're having with government literally mirror the essence of this question. We're in constant communication with the developer, with the city, and with the province. And with the province, we're saying we're making the case. Let's move to design quickly. And as part of the design phase, we are making the case that we have an existing school design that we like. We know that we can make it better. There are certain refinements we could make. And we could expedite the design process to get to also ultimately where we need to get is permission to go forward with construction. So our hope, our strong desire is to see a school open its doors in 2024, if at all possible, and that will require a lot of things aligning and a great deal of ongoing purposeful deliberation between us and all of our partners, the developer, the City of Winnipeg, the province, eventually an architect, and then finally contractors.
Thank you very much, Christian. I appreciate the question, and certainly from the political side, I would like to assure the person asking the question that your school board has regular meetings with the MLAs in the area, and certainly with government. Your point is well taken. We have an existing school design. We are absolutely ready to go, and clearly the enrollment pressures continue to be challenging in a growing area. We were pleased to see government sign off, as Jamie shared, on the actual purchase plan, so we do have that piece, and we will continue to lobby and try to move this forward. So thank you for the question. The next question we have is, will part of the $936,000 be allocated to reviewing and revising Lrsd's accessibility plan, which she's referring to the 2017 accessibility plan. Can you please expand on what the review of policies will include, what other DEI initiatives will support students with disabilities? And I'll hand that over to our superintendent.
And so most definitely students with disabilities, staff challenged with disabilities are very much a part of our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative. LRSD's accessibility plan is presently being revised, and so the community can look forward to seeing a draft revision of that plan circulating for feedback and community consultation. And again, all diversities are a part of the DEI services, and what we will become again built into our culture in LRSD to always wanting to review, always reviewing policies, programs, practices, curricula, with a lens to diversity, equity, and inclusion in all its forms, human diversity in all its forms, and that, of course, includes students, staff, adults, and children with disabilities.
Thank you very much, Christian. Next question, what are LRSD's priorities for libraries?
Well, our priority for LRSD's libraries is to continue to be one of those school divisions on the vanguard that has teacher librarians. There aren't many that continue to support that very defined role. And so we're committed to that group of teachers. And this ongoing dialogue we have together about how we work with each other, how we work together, how the teacher librarian plays a significant and important role as part of a team. I personally, as a principal, always treated the teacher librarian as a member of the student services team, and saw in that person's roles and responsibilities the same core competencies and responsibilities that I looked for in all of my colleagues that were in student services, there to work alongside classroom teachers to support students along their journey, and especially be there with each other together when students would encounter children would encounter challenges on their journey. And so this is the vision for library services as part of a larger vision for learning and teaching.
Thank you, Christian. Next question is, and this will probably be Jamie and Christian then. Jamie in his presentation referred to 0.8 spending for community education. The person is looking for clarifications. What programs are being offered?
Yeah, so this is community education is a classification that's done by the province in order to separate what's regular instruction with different instructional education that's provided by the division. And so the 0.8% part of the programming costs for that revolve around our Riel Arts and Technology Center. And so some of those costs that are being identified, and Christian, correct me if I'm wrong, this would be like our plumbing, our media, what do you call it, medium broadcast program, our electrician, our plumbing programming, anything that's revolves around programming at ATC.
I think it would be some of that programming.
Some of the programming, yeah.
And so not necessarily the programs you've touched on, which that's more of a community college that touch on both the adult education and K-12 education worlds. But there are aspects of the programming in the Riel School Division Arts and Technology Center that are also extend beyond to community education efforts.
Thank you. Next question is, with the increase in mental health needs due to the pandemic, is there any consideration for increasing clinical support for the upcoming year? Christian, that'll come to you.
Yes, so it's definitely a part of the story we should be telling this evening, and it is so very much a part of the investment. So we have a clinical services team that is amongst the most robust in the province. We here again, it varies from school division to school divisions. Some school divisions in the area of clinical services have both a combination of contracted services and a team that is on staff. So all of our clinical services in Lrsd are on staff. We've invested incrementally over the last decade, year over year, and are quite confident in that team's ability to support the overall effort. And so, of course, in supporting children with respect to their mental health needs, and especially in the context of the pandemic, it's a collective responsibility. It's about building everyone's capacity: classroom teachers, educational assistants, student services teams. And so that bolstering of the classroom, those additional teachers and educational assistants are very much a part of that. Of this mental health, the mental health needs being an integral part of our vision for learning and teaching in Lrsd. And it's that relationship, right? It's that connection between learning and well-being and well-becoming. So a big part of the conversation we're having as a society around mental health, and we're all of us with respect to our mental health are always on a continuum, and it ebbs and flows. But our sense of purpose in life, in relationship to our work, or in the case of schools, in relationship to the learning journey, is integral in is an important factor in one's mental health, in one's well-being. And so when a child is finds themselves challenged by the learning journey, the learning agenda, and the expectations, and again, that challenge ebbs and flows. That very much is a significant factor in how that child will feel about themselves and about the world and their well-being, their mental health. And so, seeing those connections, being very explicit about it all, and seeing how it all connects, and how that clinical services team working alongside classroom teachers, student services teachers, to make all of those connections and be a team that supports children and young people is at the heart of it all.
Thank you, Christian. I need to just circle back for just a moment to the Sage Creek School, the new building. We've had a few other questions asked around, so why hasn't the school board approved this? And I think it's really important because we do have an audience this evening, to make it very clear that new school construction is not a decision that the school board can make. New school construction is solely under the purview of the province of Manitoba. So, to the questions I'm seeing here, I wish that we had the authority. We know the need is there. All we can do is continue, and we have been continuing to advocate on behalf of the community. So I just wanted to come back because a few questions came up saying, why hadn't we made that decision? It's simply not one that we are able to make. The next question is, with the expansion at Collège Saint-Sauvé, will there be a change to catchment area for French High School? Christian.
Well, yes. Well, geographies are always being looked at and a part of the conversation, yes, you can anticipate. The community can anticipate. We will talk about the relationship between geography and enrollment patterns and schools. In this case, the relationship between Collège Saint-Sauvé and Collège Béliveau. So community actually can anticipate dialogue around these questions in the coming weeks and before spring break.
Thank you very much. And continuing piece on Sage Creek, is there discussion about budgeting for increase before and after school care at École Sage Creek? Before you put your mask back.
Well, yes. So before and after school care is also has been an ongoing conversation and consideration in Lrsd. So we over the last few years, since 2014, have been at the school level where it has been impracticable for for providers to support families. We've endeavored to create before and after school programs in a few schools, and if there's a need and there's room and there's capacity, we see what we can do. But here again, where we really need to continue to advocate, and we will, is to talk about the relationship between kindergarten, childcare, and improving access to childcare, access to quality childcare, and the cost of childcare in Manitoba. And again, as I've touched on this evening, and I'll share more in the days and weeks and months to come, we have lots that we can learn from other provinces, other countries, and the solutions are within reach. We just need to find the collective political and societal will to make it so.
Thank you, Christian. The next one is a very timely question. It talks about, you highlighted pressures presently in K-8 in Sage Creek spilling into area schools. However, shortly, if not now, those pressures will be transferred into area high schools. What is the future plans to address these populations in 9 to 12 area high schools infrastructure? Teacher, and you're talking about the growth not only in Sage Creek, certainly Buena Vista, and all of that kind of southeast growth. And I know that Christian will gladly speak to it because there's some meetings coming up soon.
Well, this is an opportunity to reassure the community that we are going to have ongoing dialogue and present the community with the dilemmas we face and solutions to those dilemmas. We've been having, so we have lots of plates spinning. We've been deliberating about budget, and we've presented a draft budget this evening. We've been responding to the pandemic, and that has been a lot of that has meant a lot of ongoing deliberation and work. We've started a conversation, and we're journeying along with the Collège Jeanne Sauvé family of schools, and we are going to now invite the J.H. Bruns, Collège Béliveau, and Windsor Park families of schools to also come together as we did last year, and as we have since 2017, every year in different ways, in different forms. They're journeying together. We anticipate journeying again in the winter of 2022. And so you can anticipate communication coming soon.
Thank you very much, Christian. Appreciate it. Well, as we get to 8 o'clock, and actually I think we've addressed the questions that we have seen here in front of us, I would like to, on behalf of the team here, I would like to thank you for spending the evening with us. I hope that you continue to put forward some questions. You know how to reach most of us very easily. We encourage you to continue on the thought exchange, and please continue looking for information on our website. We'll continue to post spotlight stories, so if there are questions that you see that are coming up this evening, you know, as you're reflecting on it, please reach out to any of your trustees or certainly email us here. So once again, thank you so much for making this a priority. Be well, and we look forward to the next opportunity to talk to you. Have a great evening. Take care.
Night.